Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching NET25 World News. A heated clash erupted in the Oval Office between President Trump and Ukraine's President Zelensky. In a fiery exchange, Trump accused Zelensky of gambling with World War III, claiming that by demanding U.S. security guarantees, the Ukrainian leader is showing disrespect and isn't prepared for genuine peace with Russia. Now, President Zelensky countered that any ceasefire requires those guarantees, with talks over a proposed agreement on sharing Ukraine's mineral wealth. Now in question, Trump warned, make a deal or we're out. As the exchange grew increasingly bitter, Zelensky eventually left the White House. Let's listen in.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
What was meant to be a critical meeting between allies to resolve a conflict roiling the globe dissolved into a shouting match in the Oval Office between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III.
The meeting was meant to solidify a resources deal, offering U.S. access to Ukrainian minerals to keep aid flowing as Kyiv continues to fight the war with Russia. Western aid has been crucial to Ukraine's fight, but Trump has questioned U.S. support for Kyiv.
You know that we had conversations with him.
Tensions on Friday boiled over when Zelensky questioned Vice President J.D. Vance's proposal for diplomacy with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
In 2019, I signed with him the deal.
Zelensky said he'd signed a ceasefire with the Russian leader in 2019, only to be attacked 3 years later.
What kind of diplomacy, J.D., you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
The mention of disrespect seemed to trigger Trump's wrath, who proceeded to berate the foreign leader.
Everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't been
in this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion. We gave you military equipment, and your men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment,
if
you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Again,
I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
I can tell you
You're
again,
running low on soldiers.
Listen, please,
you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I wanted this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
The meeting really devolved, I think it's fair to say, into an argument.
Reuters correspondent Jeff Mason said he'd never seen an episode like that in 16 years of covering the White House.
Not something you would normally see in diplomacy. This also showed that the tensions that have been bubbling up between the two leaders in the last couple of weeks not only were below the surface, but came above the surface. President Trump recently calling Zelensky a dictator, then sort of moving back from that a little bit yesterday when he was asked about it. He didn't use that language again today, but he certainly wasn't happy with being challenged by the Ukrainian president. And as a result, they canceled a press conference that was planned for today, and President Zelensky departed the White House early.
Trump wrote on social media afterward that the exchange showed that Ukraine was, quote, not ready for peace. Zelensky left the White House early without signing a minerals deal.
Great to be at your side once again. We're going to stay at your side.
The episode marked a stunning turnaround from the previous administration when U.S. President Joe Biden rallied Western nations to defend Ukraine in the face of Russia's invasion.
You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards.
Trump has pledged to end the war without outlining precisely how. Later, a senior U.S. official said Friday's clash will speed up Washington's efforts to investigate any waste, fraud, and abuse involving U.S. aid to Ukraine.
We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelensky, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. He's got to say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer. His people are dying. Look, I don't trust or distrust anybody. I just want to get a deal done. And if the deal happens, good. But you can't embolden somebody that does not have the cards. And all of a sudden that person says, oh, well, now I can keep fighting. We're not going to keep fighting. You're going to get the war done or let them go and see what happens. Let them fight it out. You saw what I saw today. That was not a man that wanted to make peace. And I'm only interested if he wants to end the bloodshed. Thank you very much, everyone.
A stunning clash at the White House is raising questions about the future of U.S.-Ukraine relations. President Trump and Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky engaged in a fiery exchange, with Trump accusing Zelensky of disrespect. Former Defense Department official John Townsend said the meeting reveals how bad American leadership looked to the world. And while the confrontation was intense, Townsend believes preparing or repairing the relationship is still possible.
Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
It's been a tough thing to watch as an American, watching the Brits and and all others react to this embarrassing, exchange and toxicity that we saw unfold.
Beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
A lot of people are saying that this was set up. I said it was definitely theater. That at the very end, I understand Trump said something like, "This is going to make great TV." And he also said that he was glad this was happening in front of the cameras so that the American people could see what's going on, or something like that. And so obviously he was glad that he was being filmed, and he took full advantage of that by being a tough guy, you know, saying all these things. And J.D. Vance sounded like he started it. I mean, he dove in and began to push Zelensky. So there was a good cop, bad cop kind of thing going on too. So I have to say, it did strike me that this was not, I don't maybe not pre-planned, you know, staged, but it was something where they certainly were not. They didn't hesitate to jump in and make this into a barroom brawl.
You think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this.
I think a lot of the upset was the way in which they talked to him. In the Oval Office, of all places, to a head of state and government, you know. And the fact that this looked like some kind of mafia shakedown. You better do this. You better sign this, or you know, it was just the rudeness of it. And so I think among the American people too, all of my friends and others who've it is really the idea that it's not so much the issue itself, although I think they disagree with the issue too. You know, but it was really the how bad the American leadership looked to the world, and how ashamed we should be that our leaders act that way.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion. We gave you military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military. If you didn't have our military equipment.
What happens now is that Marco Rubio and Waltz talk to their counterparts in his delegation. Right now, I'm sure they are gathered somewhere, and they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we untie this? Because at the same time, they want this mineral. Both sides want the mineral deal, and the negotiations with Russia. This is part of it. So they don't know. Neither side wants it to be the end, but I think it's the end for at least today.
Your people are very brave, but you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out.
The path forward is to sign this thing, but I think Trump is going to want to get back on the phone with Putin, give him a brief. This is what happened. You know, just give him an update the way you would have with an ally. You know, he's going to give Putin an update. I met with Macron, met with Keir Starmer, met with Zelensky. This is where they are, and this is where I am. And then they'll probably have their group like that met in Saudi. They'll meet again somewhere. And you know, there's another group meeting in Istanbul. I'm not sure if they're still meeting, but that was to do the nuts and bolts of the diplomatic relationship between the two countries. So I think you know, this thing's moving forward. This in and of itself will not stop the process, and I think Putin will continue to hammer Ukraine.
Mr. President, is the deal off?
Meanwhile, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham called President Donald Trump's meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky a complete, utter disaster, telling reporters that Zelensky must resign and send somebody over for the U.S. to continue working with Ukraine. Take a look.
Complete, utter disaster. I've been to Ukraine 8 or 9 times since the war started. I understand the consequences of Putin's actions against Ukraine. I appreciate what the Ukrainian people have done. They fought like tigers. At the end of the day, I was hoping that this minerals deal, which would be transformative in the relationship, would go over well. I talked to Zelensky this morning. Don't take the bait. President Trump was in a very good mood last night. Somebody asked me, am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of J.D. Vance, standing up for our country. We want to be helpful. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. The way he handled the meeting, the way he confronted the president was just over the top. So I think the relationship between Ukraine and America is important, vitally important. But can Zelensky do a deal with the United States? After what I saw, I don't know. He was shocked. He was very upbeat. I told Zelensky, we'll talk about security guarantees. We'll talk about ceasefires and how the war ends. This is a process. You have a new relationship with America, a $500 billion, $500 billion deal that President Trump is proud of, that gives us an interest worth defending. Let's talk about the positive. But he was terrible at Munich, Zelensky, and I think he has made it almost impossible to sell to the American people that he's a good investment. He either needs to resign and send somebody over that we can do business with, or he needs to change.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told Fox News he respects President Trump and the American people. Now, Fox anchor Brett Baier pressed Zelensky on whether relations with Trump could be salvaged amidst the fallout. Let's listen in.
I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect President and I respect American people. And if, I don't know, if I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. So we are ready for peace, but we have to be in strong position. What does it mean? Just to know that our army is strong, that our partners with us, and that we have security guarantees.
Can Ukraine win this war or hold off Russia without continued U.S. support?
It will be difficult for us. That's why I'm here. That's why we speak about the future negotiations. It will be difficult without your support, but we can't lose. We don't have enough weapon to push them out, and we don't see now, for now, we don't see really big volume of new support from the United States, but with all respect again.
Do you regret that? Are you regretting that that happened today?
Regretting? Yes, I think it was not good. I think it was not good.
Do you think your relationship with Donald Trump, President Trump, after today, can be salvaged?
Can be? Yes, of course, because it's relations more than two presidents. It's the historical relations, strong relations between our people.
Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
The explosive Oval Office clash between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. President Donald Trump has sparked global reactions, with leaders voicing strong opinions on the fallout. Now, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on X reaffirmed Canada's unwavering support for Ukraine, calling its fight for democracy and sovereignty a fight that matters to us all. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz emphasized Germany's commitment to Ukraine, stating no one wants peace more than the citizens of Ukraine, while pledging Europe's continued support. French President Emmanuel Macron, speaking in Portugal, condemned Russia as the aggressor and praised Ukraine's fight for dignity and independence, urging allies to remain united. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni warned against divisions within Western allies, calling for an urgent summit to address challenges like Ukraine and ensure unity in defending shared principles. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese framed Ukraine's struggle as a battle between democracy and authoritarianism, vowing continued support for as long as it takes.
people of Ukraine are fighting not just for their own national sovereignty. They are fighting for the international rule of law. Australia has committed some $1.5 billion to help Ukraine defend itself. More than $1.3 billion of that is military support. We will continue to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes, because this is the struggle of a democratic nation versus an authoritarian regime led by Vladimir Putin, who clearly has imperialistic designs not just on Ukraine, but throughout that region.
Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev on Telegram mocked Zelensky's treatment as a brutal dressing down, while Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban praised Trump's stance as brave and pro-peace. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on X expressed solidarity with Zelensky, urging him to be strong, be brave, be fearless, while pledging continued work towards a just peace. The clash has underscored tensions between Western allies and raised questions about U.S. leadership in the ongoing war effort. In other news tonight, the fight against Mexico's cartels has reached a critical turning point under intense pressure from the Trump administration. Mexico has extradited 29 high-profile cartel operatives to the U.S. The move aims to crack down on the deadly fentanyl trade and help Mexico avoid harsh economic tariffs. But with cartels deeply entrenched and rumors of U.S. military intervention swirling, the big question remains, is this a lasting change or just a temporary concession? And tonight we examine the details of this volatile drug war. Now, Mexico's powerful cartels have long operated with impunity, fueling violence and addiction that extends far beyond its borders, particularly into the United States. President Donald Trump has consistently criticized Mexico for failing to stop criminal organizations from trafficking fentanyl into the U.S., even threatening tariffs on countries that compromise border security.
Look, the damage has been done. We've lost millions of people due to fentanyl. It comes mostly from China, but it comes through Mexico and it comes through Canada.
The recent mass extradition represents a potential watershed moment in this ongoing drug war. At the center of this operation is Rafael Caro Quintero, the infamous figure allegedly behind DEA agent Enrique Kiki Carena's 1985 murder. His 2022 capture reignited a decades-long pursuit by American authorities, and now he faces prosecution on U.S. soil. Now, this unprecedented action comes as Mexico responds to mounting pressure from the Trump administration, which has demanded decisive steps against fentanyl trafficking networks. Meanwhile, Mexico seeks to avoid crippling 25% tariffs on its exports to the United States.
Sabemos que el presidente Trump
We know President Trump has his way of communicating and setting negotiation timings and joint work. We must think we can reach an agreement.
Hay que siempre pensar que podemos llegar a un acuerdo.
The extradited individuals represent some of Mexico's most dangerous criminals. Brothers Omar and Miguel Angel Trevino Morales, architects of the Z cartel's reign of terror, have been transferred to U.S. custody after transforming Mexican communities into battlegrounds. Intelligence suggests they continued directing operations even while imprisoned. Also surrendered were Jose Angel Cobo in Sunza and Aralo Guzman Salzar, son of notorious kingpin El Chapo. Despite their famous lineage, many within cartel circles viewed them as privileged heirs who never truly earned their positions of power. Former DEA Chief of International Operations Mike Vigil considered it historic and unrelated to the current negotiations in Washington, D.C. between representatives of the two countries to avoid the 25% tariffs on Mexican imports to the U.S.
Never has there been such a massive extradition. In the past, it's been a few individuals here and there, but 29 is really a historical event. It means that this will be the start of a new beginning in terms of bilateral efforts in combating illegal drugs in Mexico and hopefully here in the United States.
However, despite these significant arrests, Mexico's drug organizations remain deeply embedded in the country's social and economic fabric. The crucial question now is whether this level of cooperation will be sufficient to forestall the Trump administration's threatened tariffs, or if it merely represents a brief pause in an escalating drug war with no end in sight. President Marcos is furious about that bridge collapse in Isabela province. His spokesperson, Claire Castro, says he's demanding a full investigation. And if there's any hint of corruption involved since the project began in 2014, people are definitely going to jail. Now, this isn't just any bridge failure. It was newly retrofitted and had just reopened. The third span collapsed Thursday night when a dump truck carrying over 100 tons of boulders tried crossing it. 6 people were injured, including a child. Now, the bridge cost 1.22 billion pesos and was just completed on February 1st. Castro emphasized that local governments need to check infrastructure integrity and work with the Public Works Department when there are problems. Hundreds of thousands of people rallied in cities and towns across Greece on Friday to demand justice on the second anniversary of the country's deadliest ever train crash. And striking workers grounded flights and halted sea and train transport.
Petrol bombs were hurled at police in Athens as Greeks on Friday went on strike in nationwide protests marking the second anniversary of the country's deadliest train crash. 57 people were killed when a passenger train collided with a freight train on February 28, 2023 in central Greece. The accident is a painful emblem of the perceived neglect of Greece's infrastructure in the decades before the crash and the 2 years since. In one of the biggest demonstrations in Greece in years, public services and many private businesses, including all international and domestic flights, were brought to a halt. Across the country, people poured into the streets chanting "murderers" against what they say is the state's role in the disaster. In front of Parliament in Athens' Syntagma Square, the names of the dead were spray-painted in red on the ground.
We feel anger. It's anger that prevails right now for the fact that 57 souls lost their lives unfairly, for the profits of the few. That's why we're here today.
The government denies wrongdoing. The Athens protest was peaceful until hooded youths hurled petrol bombs at police and tried to storm the barricades of the Parliament building. Riot police fired tear gas and water cannon as clashes then spread into the surrounding neighbourhoods. More than 80 people were detained and 5 injured in Athens alone, authorities said. Clashes also broke out in Greece's second city, Thessaloniki. Safety gaps that caused the crash have not been filled 2 years on, a state inquiry found on Thursday. A separate judicial investigation remains unfinished and no one has been convicted in the accident. Greece's government, which won re-election after the crash in 2023, has faced repeated criticisms by victims' families for refusing a parliamentary inquiry into political responsibility. Protesters on Friday say they have waited too long.
We want to send a message to the government and employers that we will not tolerate any more going to work and not knowing if we're going to get back home alive.
The government says it is up to the judiciary to investigate the accident. Next week, Parliament is expected to debate whether to investigate possible political blame for the disaster.
In other news tonight, Beijing accused the United States of exerting tariff pressure and blackmail after President Donald Trump's latest threat to slap an extra duty of 10% on imports from China, citing a continued flow of fentanyl into the country.
Beijing accused the United States on Friday of exerting tariff pressure and blackmail. That's after President Donald Trump's latest threat to slap on extra duty of 10% on imports from China. He cited a continued flow of fentanyl into the country. The fresh China tariffs, in addition to a tariff of 10% levied on February the 4th, coincide with the start of China's annual parliamentary meet next week. It's an event at which Beijing is expected to roll out its 2025 economic priorities. In its daily briefing on Friday, a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said Washington had used the fentanyl issue to insist on tariff pressure and blackmail.
If the United States continues to use the issue of fentanyl to exert pressure, blackmail, coercion, and threats, it will only backfire and have an impact on the dialogue and cooperation between China and the United States in the field of drug control.
On Thursday, Trump said his proposed 25% tariffs on Mexican and Canadian goods would take effect on Tuesday, along with the extra duty of 10% on Chinese imports. The announcement leaves Beijing less than a week to publish countermeasures. Earlier on Friday, China's Commerce Ministry said it had some of the world's toughest anti-drug policies and highlighted the risks new tariffs would bring to global supply chains. Analysts say Beijing still hopes to strike a deal with the Trump administration, but trade talks have so far not materialized. And the White House is ramping up signs it's preparing for a wider economic decoupling from China.
Japan's birth rate just hit a new record low in 2024. Just 720,988 babies were born, down 5% from last year. It's the 9th straight year of decline, despite government efforts to boost childbearing. Meanwhile, Japan had 1.62 million deaths, meaning more than 2 people died for every new baby. Unlike South Korea, which just saw its fertility rate increase for the first time in 9 years, Japan's trend keeps heading downward. Experts point to fewer marriages during COVID as a key factor. While marriages did increase slightly in 2024, the pandemic's impact could continue through 2025. Since very few Japanese babies are born outside marriage, wedding numbers and birth rates are closely linked. Prime Minister Ishiba acknowledged the problem but highlighted the marriage increase as a potential positive sign.
昨年1年間の我が国における外国人を含む出生数は72万988人となり、過去最小を更新したと承知をしております。多くの方々の子どもを産み育てたいという希望が実現しておらず、少子化に歯止めがかかっていないものと考えております。子ども未来戦略に掲げられた施策を総合的に推進することによりまして、希望する誰もが子どもを持ち安心して子育てができる社会の実現に向けまして、取り組んでいく考えでございます。現役世代の負担を軽減することや、また働き方に中立な社会保障制度とすることで、社会保障制度の支え手を増やすこと、こうしたことに取り組むことによりまして、全世代対応型の社会保障の構築に引き続き取り組む考えでございます。
Meanwhile, South Korea's fertility rate rose to 0.75 in 2024 compared to Japan's most recent rate of 1.20, possibly thanks to government support for work-family balance, childcare, housing, and business initiatives encouraging parenthood. South Korea introduced new safety measures for carrying portable batteries on planes, following a fire on an Airbusan plane in January. Passengers on South Korean airlines will now be required to keep power banks on their person and not in overhead cabin bins. Devices should not be charged on board, and battery quantity and strength limits will be enforced, according to the new rules which kicked off today. Passengers will be permitted to carry up to 5 100-watt-hour portable batteries, while batteries over 160 watt-hours won't be allowed on board. The batteries will also need to be stored in clear plastic bags, according to the Transport Ministry. Korean authorities said the measures were in response to public anxiety about fires after an Airbusan plane was consumed in flames on January 28 while awaiting to take off at Gimhae International Airport in southern South Korea. Investigators have not yet determined the cause of the fire, but a preliminary investigation statement on Thursday said it started in a cabin overhead locker after boarding.
I heard we need to put the power bank in the seat pocket inside the airplane, so I prepared this. Other people may think differently, but I think it can be dangerous if a power bank is being charged. I don't think all batteries will explode. But it's better to be safe, so I prepared it like this.
Authorities expanded evacuation orders for residents as a wildfire in Japan's northeastern Iwate prefecture continued to spread. According to public broadcaster NHK, more than 1,400 hectares of land and nearly 100 homes have already been burned, and one person has died as a result of the fires. The Japan Self-Defense Forces have mobilized helicopters to contain the fire, which has been burning since Wednesday, while over 4,500 residents have been ordered to evacuate the area. NHK reported a dry weather alert has been issued in the city of Afunatu amid the current dry spell. Indonesian nationals who were extracted from the scam centers in Myanmar's town of Niwayadi arrived in Indonesia after being repatriated via Thailand on Friday. A total of 84 Indonesian nationals were flown in on 3 different flights from Don Muang Airport in Bangkok and escorted by Indonesian officials for an identification procedure before being driven to a temporary shelter. Many Indonesians were promised high-paying jobs in Thailand, but were forced into online scamming operations in Cambodia and Myanmar. Salman Al-Farizi, who was among the victims repatriated, said he got paid twice, suffered much physical violence, and was forced to work for more than 16 hours a day.
In the beginning, I was working in Cambodia with no salary, and the company was closed after being reported to the Indonesian embassy. Then they moved me to Myanmar in KK Park. When I worked in KK Park, I only received money from my boss twice without knowing what the money was for and couldn't send it back to my hometown and was only able to spend it there. In total I only received 20,000 baht or $584. During the time I worked there I was always subjected to physical violence and received no salary.
The Indonesian government says it will investigate the case deeply and urges its people to not fall for the tempting offer that led to a scam operation.
Yang akan kita lakukan di Indonesia adalah proses pendalaman.
What we'll do next in Indonesia is to investigate deeply by the social ministry and police. So, now we are not able to decide whether they are victims of human trafficking or not, but potential victims. Yes. But of course there will be further investigation.
Actor Gene Hackman likely died 9 days before he and his wife Betsy Arakawa were found dead inside their home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, according to the county sheriff.
An initial interrogation was conducted of Mr. Hackman's pacemaker. This revealed that his last event was recorded on February 17th, 2025. I was advised that a more thorough investigation will be completed. According to the pathologist, I think that is a very good assumption that was his last day of life. Due to the unusual circumstances of 2 decedents in the residence, there was a concern for scene safety. Santa Fe City fire personnel and the New Mexico Gas Company were requested to the scene to test for carbon monoxide or other foreign elements. The scene was deemed safe, and approximately 9:30 p.m. a search warrant was issued and executed on the residence. Now, collected from the residence, from this search warrant, there were 2 green in color cell phones, 2 bottles of medication, 1 bottle of over-the-counter Tylenol, my request medical records, and a 2025 monthly planner calendar.
He also said it wasn't clear who died first after the 2 were discovered dead in separate rooms on Wednesday. The sheriff again ruled out foul play. Hackman and Arakawa called Santa Fe home since the 1980s and were active in the city's art community and culinary scene. In recent years, he and his pianist wife were seen less often in town as his health deteriorated. The couple lived a very private life before their deaths. The caretaker at their gated community discovered the couple dead on Wednesday when he looked into the home through a window, according to his call to emergency services.
Santa Fe 911, what is that emergency?
Hello, my name is. I'm the caretaker for Santa Fe Summit. I'm here about past 10,000 ways. I think we just found one deceased person inside a house. What's the address here? There's no address. There's no address. I'm going to wait for you at the gate. I'm going to wait for you to please send somebody really quick.
Hackman, a former Marine known for his raspy voice, appeared in more than 80 films, as well as on television and the stage during a lengthy career that started in the early 1960s. He earned his first Oscar nomination for his breakout role as the brother of bank robber Clyde Barrow in 1967's Bonnie and Clyde. He won an Oscar for Best Actor in 1972 for his portrayal of Detective Popeye Doyle in The French Connection, and in 1993 won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for Unforgiven. Now, Skype will shut down on May 5 as owner Microsoft retires the two-decade-old internet calling service that redefined how people connect across borders. Take a look.
Microsoft is hanging up on Skype. The software giant said Friday it is retiring the two-decade-old internet calling service on May 5th. While it redefined how people connect across borders, Microsoft is now going to focus on its more modern Teams application instead. Founded in 2003, Skype's audio and video calls quickly disrupted the landline industry in the early 2000s and made the company a household name, boasting hundreds of millions of users at its peak. But the platform has struggled to keep up with easier-to-use and more reliable rivals such as Zoom and Salesforce's Slack in recent years. Skype will become the latest in a series of high-flying bets that Microsoft has mishandled, such as the Internet Explorer web browser and its Windows Phone. Other big tech firms have also struggled with online communication tools, including Google, which has made several attempts with Hangouts and Duo.
Amazon unveiled the first major overhaul of its Alexa voice assistant since it was introduced more than a decade ago, embedding it with generative artificial intelligence. Take a look.
Amazon has launched an AI-powered version of its Alexa voice assistant after repeated development delays. At an event Wednesday night in New York, company Senior Vice President Panos Panay called it your friendly, know-it-all sidekick.
She's been trained in a couple of different ways, from EQ to humor to understanding. So what that means is she checks my tone. She brings a nice tone back. She understands I'm a little bit nervous. She's trying to calm me. It's kind of a great conversation. Also recognizes the environment around us.
Alexa was first introduced a decade ago. Amazon has since ploughed billions into the product, hoping it will drive sales for its main e-commerce website. It says some 500 million gadgets connected to Alexa are already in consumer hands. But many people use them for little more than setting timers and checking the weather, and Alexa has so far been a money-losing venture for the tech giant. Amazon boss Andy Jassy says developers have thought hard about how to make the new version more useful.
How are you actually using this new generative AI revolution to make Alexa meaningfully better? And so our team has been working on this for several months. I've had a chance to use it for the last several weeks. It is really remarkable in my opinion.
Dubbed Alexa Plus, the new bot is free for Amazon Prime members and $19.99 per month for everyone else. The service will become available to some users in March, before gradually rolling out more widely. Besides being able to read the room, Amazon says Alexa Plus can chat with users and respond to multiple prompts in sequence, not just one question at a time. The launch comes after delays driven by concerns over the speed and quality of responses. Amazon executives have admitted battling to eliminate so-called hallucinations when bots deliver fabricated answers.
And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on Net25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.